Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today inshallah we'll be learning about our Islamic laws concerning fasting. Inshallah most of the ahkam that will be mentioned, most of the verdicts that will be mentioned will be the verdicts of the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, may Allah prolong his life. If I mention one of the verdicts of another marja, I will inshallah tell you. So just consider that any verdict that will be mentioned, it will be the verdict of Sayyid Sistani Damatullah. First and foremost, we start off today with the meaning of fasting. The literal meaning, and then the meaning in jurisprudence. As you know, or you may know, the words that are used by Islam, for example, salat, siyam, hajj, and zakat, even khums, they were all present in the Arabic language before the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used them in he used them in the religion. He used them when he mentioned the practices. So there's a literal meaning for the word, and then there's a meaning that is correspondent to the literal meaning. However, it's a meaning that is basically related to the religion or to the fiqh, to the Islamic laws. So what do you think is the literal meaning of siyam? Yes? Abstaining from food and drinks. Another answer? That's the literal meaning. Okay. Another answer? The literal meaning, you weren't too far off, brother. The literal meaning is to refrain. Just refraining from anything would be considered siyam, or can be called siyam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quotes Lady Mary alayhi salam to have said, فَقُولِي إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا. Surely I have vowed a fast to the beneficent Allah, so I shall not speak to any man today. I realize Maryam alayhi salam had given birth to Isa. And when she returned to the people, she knew that she was about to be accused of adultery. So Maryam alayhi salam wished that she did not exist. As the Quran says, يَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ نَسْيًا مَنْسِيًّا. The Quran told us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her the glad tidings, the good news, that all you should do is remain silent and tell the people that you have vowed to fast on that day, right? Surely I have vowed a fast to the beneficent Allah, so I shall not speak to any man today. It is said by scholars that in the era of Maryam alayhi salam and Zakaria alayhi salam, there was something called siyam al-sukut, or siyam an al-kalam, where a person refrains to speak. This type of fasting is not present in the Islamic jurisprudence. Thus, you don't see anyone saying, "Nawaitu an asum," I intend to fast to get closer to Allah, and then he refrains from speaking. Yes, refraining from speaking while fasting is proper. It is something that is liked. Why? Because when a person talks, he might make a mistake, or at times he might sin by performing ghiba, or namima, or similar bad deeds. And so it is recommended, it is liked, that a person refrains from talking when he's fasting, except if he's talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or something that is related to God azza wa jal. So if he's doing tasbih, he's glorifying Allah, or he is, for example, preaching about the religion, talking about the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu salam, or reciting Quran, that is definitely one of the best deeds that he could perform while fasting. So the literal meaning of fasting is to refrain. So you can say, "Sumtu an akli al-khinzir." I refrain from eating pig or pork. You can say that. Literally, siyam means to refrain. However, in jurisprudence, in the Islamic jurisprudence, when we say siyam, we mean refraining from a set of invalidators. mufattirat, which we will see inshallah. From the real dawn to Maghrib, we're going to call Maghrib sunset, inshallah. We're going to see how we can find out that Maghrib actually occurred, with the intention of getting closer to God through the fast. So when we say siyam, Islamically, we're talking about number one, refraining from 10 invalidators. Number two, remaining in that state from Fajr, from the real dawn to Maghrib. And number three, intending to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is fundamental when it comes to fasting and to worshipping. Okay? Why is it fundamental? Why is it really important to intend that you're getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you're fasting? Or when you're worshipping Allah? You can accept the deed. Okay? You're very close. Repeat the question. So why is it important, why is it very important to intend that you're getting closer to Allah as you're worshipping Him? Whether you're praying, fasting, performing Hajj, or any other worship. Jayyid. You see, the jurists tell us that the spirit of a worship is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the ibadah itself, the worship, cannot be a type of worship without that intention. Suppose a person does the same deeds we do while praying, but he doesn't have the intention of getting closer to God. Suppose he has the intention of, let's say, showing off, or just doing exercise. The salat is batil, his salat is void. Similarly, if he refrained from the 10 invalidators, a person refrained from eating and drinking, for example, for the whole day, but he wasn't doing it to get closer to God. He was doing it, for example, to lose weight. He wouldn't be fasting. His fast would be batil, void. So the spirit of ibadah is what? Spirit of the worship is to intend that you're getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any questions? Inshallah, we're going to be studying 3 chapters today. Briefly, of course. The first chapter concerns the rules about sighting the crescent moon. Because we're going to see that through moon sighting, we'll be able to determine when the Islamic month starts. And among the Islamic month is Shahr Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, the month where we have to be fasting. So it's essential to understand how we can determine whether the moon can be sighted or not. It's essential to understand the rulings concerning this issue. Thus, we start off with this chapter, and we start off with a Quranic verse that we probably all have heard about. Allah says subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah, the chapter of the cow, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. Now, before we explain the verse, what do you understand from the verse? You all speak Arabic and you have good understanding. What do you understand when Allah tells you, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ? Answer?
For those of you who see the month, then you can fast. It's like a little
Okay.
That's what I understood.
Okay. So you understand that if Shahr Ramadan starts, you have to fast? Can we say that?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Does anyone have another guess? What do you understand when the verse says, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ? Seeing the moon? What do you understand from it? Shahida is witnessing. So you can't witness the month, you have to witness the moon. So the verse is saying, those of you who witness the moon must do what? Fast? Fast what? Month of Ramadan. Okay. Is there a third guess? There are multiple or several interpretations for this verse. I'm going to mention two. And these interpretations will differ based on the meaning of two words. First of all, what is meant by shahida? This is important. And second of all, what is meant by the word shahr? If we understand shahida as witnessing, then as Ahmed said, you must witness something, you must see it with your eyes. And a month is not seen. It's part of time, and time is not seen. So the shahr will be the crescent moon. And it will be called shahr as it comes from the word shuhra. When you're popular, you say you're mashhur, right? When a person takes his sword out of its scabbard, the Arabs say shahara sayfah. Why do they say shahara? Because the sword has appeared. Now it's out of its scabbard and the people can see it, right? So anything that's apparent is called shahr or mashhur. You're going to see the word that has the three letters Sheen, Ha, and Ra being used. The Arabs call the crescent moon at a certain stage shahr. Why? Because as we will see, when it reaches that stage, plenty of people will be able to see it. Hundreds, in fact thousands of people will be able to see the shahr. So if Allah says shahida and He means witness, then He's talking about shahr meaning the crescent moon. As for if shahida meant to be present, being present, then the word shahr in this context will mean shahr, month, the month of Ramadan. So Allah would be telling you, whoever is present in their watan, he's in his hometown or her hometown, whoever is not traveling will have to fast when the month of Ramadan begins. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. So the two interpretations that we will mention, therefore, whoever of you is present in the month, meaning during the month of Ramadan, he's present as in he is in his hometown, or he's not traveling, he's intending to stay somewhere for at least 10 days or more, even if it's not his hometown, which we call iqama in Islamic jurisprudence. Whoever is present in the month, he shall fast therein. He has to fast the month of Ramadan. The second interpretation is, therefore, whoever of you sees the crescent moon, as it is in a state of clarity, he shall fast the month of Ramadan. So according to the second interpretation, you're going to have to depend on what? On the crescent moon. When you're able to see the crescent moon, it's in that state where it's called shahr, then you'll know that you have to start fasting because the month will have begun. Let's look at a few narrations from the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, concerning this issue as well. We're not jurists, mujtahids, and we don't have the right to derive rulings from narrations or from the Quran until we reach the state of ijtihad, which means that a person will have to enter hawza and study for tens of years until he reaches a stage where he's able to derive the laws based on the Quran and based on the ahadith, the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. However, I'm mentioning these narrations because number one, they're very clear and our ulama, our jurists, mention them to us to clarify the issue of moon sighting, and so that we can have a better understanding of this issue, because unfortunately, every month of Ramadan, before the beginning of the month, and before Eid al-Fitr, you have a lot of people who are kind of debating with others concerning the moon sighting. And a lot of people have objections when it comes to moon sighting. The issue is very simple, very easy, but the people, unfortunately, they don't understand it properly. For that reason, it's very important to return to the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ and see what they say. Imam al-Sadiq, peace be upon him, is narrated to have said, إِذَا رَأَيْتَ الْهِلَالِ فَصُومْ وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَهُ فَافْطِرْ. Which means, if you see the crescent moon, then start your fast. Meaning you see it during the last day of Sha'ban. Then start your fast, because the next day will be what? It will be the month of Ramadan. And if you see the crescent moon, then break your fast. Meaning if you see it at the last day of the month of Ramadan, day 29, you see the crescent moon during sunset or just before sunset, then the next day will be Eid al-Fitr. The source is Fiqh al-Imam al-Sadiq, peace be upon him, who quotes Wasa'il al-Shia. Fiqh al-Imam al-Sadiq, just to give you an idea about this book, is a very important book that was written by Sheikh Muhammad Jawad Mughniya, may Allah bless his soul. Sheikh Muhammad Jawad Mughniya was a recent scholar. He did not pass away too long ago. And he basically wrote this book in a very clear manner. He wrote this book in a very clear manner, explaining the major opinions of our jurists when it comes to jurisprudence. And he mentioned a hadith from the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, to give the reader an idea of the proofs and the evidence that the jurist used in order to derive his verdict. It's a very important book. Usually he quotes his ahadith, he brings the narrations from a book called Wasa'il al-Shia. And it's probably a book that you've heard about as well. Wasa'il al-Shia was written by a scholar called Al-Hurr al-Amili. May Allah bless his soul, who comes from the south of Lebanon. Al-Amili means from Jabal Amil. Hurr al-Amili today is buried beside or close to Imam Rida alayhi salatu wassalam in Mashhad. This scholar, what did he do? He looked at the four main ahadith books when it comes to fiqh. Kafi, Al-Kafi, Al-Istibsar, Man la yahdaruhu al-Faqih, and Tahdib al-Ahkam. And he used these ahadith, he used them to write his book. What does he do? He'll mention a title for you that concerns some chapter in jurisprudence. By the way, the book is all about jurisprudence. It's not about aqa'id, beliefs, or akhlaq, or any other science. It's only about jurisprudence. He mentions the title. Our ulama say, if you want to know the opinion of Hurr al-Amili concerning a certain issue, look at the title of the chapter. The title of the chapter, it will basically imply, it will lead you to his opinion. Next, he narrates several ahadith that come from one of the four books that I mentioned for you. And he'll basically support his opinion through these ahadith. So it's a very important book when it comes to fiqh. Did he mention all the ahadith? No. There's another book that's called Mustadrak al-Wasa'il. It's basically a book that is written based on Wasa'il al-Shia. The author of Mustadrak al-Wasa'il, he mentioned the ahadith that the Hurr al-Amili did not mention. And they're about the same size, kind of. It's an encyclopedia. Both books are encyclopedias in fiqh. The next hadith, the next narration is by Imam Rida alayhi salam, as he says, صوموا للرؤيا وافطروا وافطروا للرؤيا, which means basically fast when the crescent moon is sighted or is seen, and break your fast when the crescent moon is sighted or seen. Again, it's The source is Fiqh al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, quoting Wasa'il al-Shia. The third hadith by Imam al-Baqir, peace be upon him, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, he says, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الْهِلَالَ فَصُومُوا وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهُ فَافْطِرُوا وَلَيْسَ بِالرَّأْيِ وَلَا بِالتَّظَنِّ وَلَكِنْ بِالرُّؤْيَا. This is a very important hadith. If you see the crescent moon, then you should start your fast. Again, meaning when? During the end of Sha'ban. If you see it, then you should start your fast because the next day will be the month of Ramadan. And if you see the crescent moon, meaning at the end of the month, then you should break your fast because we know that it is haram, it's impermissible to fast during Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. Then the Imam says, break your fast. The beginning and end of the month cannot be determined based on one's opinion or one's assumption. Some people tell you, I think the moon can be seen today. Very nice. But thinking or presenting your opinion is not enough. We have to know that the moon can actually be seen. And how will we know that it could be seen? Unless we see it, right or wrong. Of course, we will see, inshallah, throughout this chapter, we will see that there are several ways to determine that the month has started or to determine that the crescent moon has been seen. The first way, the very simple and basic way, is to see it yourself. And that's why we tell people, go for istihlal. Try to see the moon. Try to sight it. But sometimes we're not able to, and other people are able to sight it. We're going to see if you can depend on their words or not. Okay? So the Imam says, the beginning and end of the month cannot be determined based on one's opinion or one's assumption. One, it is determined through sighting of the moon. Realize? What does the Imam want? He wants us to use our eyes. Especially back then, humans don't have telescopes yet. The Imams, what are they saying? Basically, try to sight the moon the same way as the Arabs used to do so during Jahiliyyah, before Islam came to them. If the Imams wanted, they could have used calculations. They knew these calculations to determine if the moon can be seen or not, right? They could have used the calculations. And there were scientists in their eras. There were people who were astronomers that could do calculations. The Imams told the people to use their eyes. Don't use calculations. Another narration by Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. The narrator called Abdurrahman ibn Abi Abdullah. He says, I asked Aba Abdullah. You know that we have two Imams that are called Aba Abdullah, right? The first one is Imam al-Hussain. And the second one? Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Usually in a hadith, when Aba Abdullah is mentioned, it is Imam al-Sadiq. When the narrator says, I asked Aba Abdullah, usually it's Imam al-Sadiq alayhi as-salatu was-salam. So he asked Aba Abdullah about what we should do if we were unable to see the crescent moon of the month of Ramadan on the 29th day of Sha'ban due to the accumulation of clouds. This person is telling the Imam, oh Imam, too many clouds were accumulated and there's a possibility that behind the clouds lies the crescent moon. Possibly it's there, but the clouds are preventing us from seeing it. Throughout many years, we've went to do istihlal in Malden Park in Windsor, and we weren't able to see the crescent moon, and it was cloudy. So there was a possibility that it was there, but the clouds are blocking our view. What should we do? The Imam said, do not start your fast, meaning for the month of Ramadan, until you see the crescent moon. If the people of another city testify that they had seen it on the 29th of Sha'ban, then make up the fast of that day. So the Imam tells him, consider that the next day is not from the days of the month of Ramadan. Consider it as the 30th of Sha'ban. Now suppose later on you get the news from other people that it had been seen. Suppose from another city. Okay? Suppose you had a huge number of people testifying that they saw it. For example, we're in Windsor, and we had a large number of 100 or 200 Shia practicing Muslims in Leamington, and they told us we saw the moon when we were not able to see it because of the clouds. The Imam says, okay, if that news reaches you, then you'll know that you did not fast on the first of the month of Ramadan. You consider it to be the 30th of Sha'ban. So now what should you do? You should make up that day. That's it. But you will not be considered to have sinned. Why? Because you applied the rule that the Imam is teaching us. Sumu lirru'ya waftaru lirru'ya. Fast when you see the crescent moon, and break your fast during Eid when you see the crescent moon. Any questions about the hadith, the narrations? Is it clear, inshallah? Okay. The signs of prayer and fasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded all people that are baligh, insane, to obey His commands. Why are we mentioning this? Number one, baligh. What we mean by baligh is a person has reached the stage of puberty. For females, there's one sign of them reaching the stage of puberty, and that is that they reach 9 years. They live for 9 lunar years. Once 9 lunar years pass after that female was born, then she is baligh. It's as simple as that. For males, there are 3 essential signs. One of them is that the male reaches 15 years. So he is 15 lunar years old. Okay? Nonetheless, anyone who's baligh and anyone who's sane, who's aqil, so he's not insane, doesn't have some mental problem to the extent where he can't understand the jurisprudence laws, he can't understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from him. Anyone who's baligh and sane must obey the commands of God. Right or wrong? طيب. Why are we mentioning this? This is something very clear. Why do you think we're mentioning this point? No matter who you are, whether you're a scholar or not, whether you are a president or not, whether you are an astronomer, a doctor, a sheikh, anything, you must obey the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we know that people are at different levels when it comes to understanding and when it comes to knowledge. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He wants us to pray or to fast, He wants us to pray at a certain time or to fast in a certain month, right or wrong. He's going to have to provide us with a sign that all people can understand, whether they're ignorant or knowledgeable. Thus, the sign has to be clear, has to be simple and easy. It can't be a sign that only astronomers can see or astronomers can determine. It has to be a sign that everyone can see. Everyone can know about that sign. For this reason, when we're talking about salat, we know that we pray 5 times a day, right? We pray in Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. Now, for Dhuhr and Asr, we're able to join between them, and same goes for Maghrib and Isha. The question is, of course, as long as you pray Dhuhr before Asr and Maghrib before Isha. The question is, how do I determine that Fajr has started? How do I determine that it is time to pray Salat al-Dhuhr? The Islamic noon has started. And how do I determine that Maghrib has begun? You see, today, we depend on what? We depend on the paper, the timetable. We look at the timetable, and we find out when we're supposed to pray. Suppose one day you don't have that timetable. Or we go back in time, living with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and we don't have a timetable. How did the first Muslims find out when it's time to pray? The sign has to be easy, right? So what is the sign for Fajr? Let's start with Fajr. Suppose one day you don't have the timetable with you. You don't have your applications and your iPhones. So how do we find out it's time for Fajr? Well, such a day will not occur. أحسنت. علي صوتك.
The Fajr al-Sadiq, the white streak that appears right before the sunrise, or by a certain amount.
أحسنت. Very nice. So basically, if we're looking at the horizon, before dawn, before Fajr, we're going to see, first of all, a vertical beam of light appear. So there's a vertical beam of light that takes place. This is called the false dawn or the fake dawn, the Fajr al-Kadhib. This beam of light will start to diminish until it completely fades away. Once it's gone, a little bit after, you will see a horizontal beam appearing on the horizon, a beam of light. And this horizontal beam will keep on rising until sunrise takes place. And you're going to see the sun. When you see the first beam of light, that is when you know that it is time for Fajr. This is called Fajr al-Sadiq. Al-Fajr al-Sadiq meaning the real Fajr. So it's a very simple and easy sign, okay? An ignorant and a knowledgeable person will be able to determine that Fajr has begun. What about Dhuhr? How do we know that it's time to pray Salat al-Dhuhr? Salat al-Dhuhr, for Salat al-Dhuhr, you're going to have to look at a pole. Suppose we have some sort of pole that's attached to the ground, or a wooden stick, some sort of stick that is attached to the ground. This pole or stick will have a shadow. Okay? Now, the shadow, based on where you are, based on your location on earth, the shadow will start to get smaller until it reaches an extreme, or it fades away. It disappears. Once the shadow starts to grow or reappears, depending on your location, you'll know that the time for Dhuhr has started. So just look at the pole and look at the shadow. The shadow will start to diminish until it reaches an extreme or disappears. Once it starts to grow or it reappears, then you'll know it is time for Dhuhr prayer. Now, remember, in a bit, inshallah, we're going to see that these timings are essential. They're very important for Salat and Siyam as well, not only for Salat. For that reason, we're mentioning them in the chapter of fasting. Now, what about Maghrib? How do we know that it's time for Salat al-Maghrib? Any idea? You look at the sun, right? Once the sun sets, you'll know it's Maghrib, right or wrong. Now, imagine that the sun actually set. You're looking at the sun from a certain level. Suppose from the roof of the mu'assasa. You're on the roof of the foundation. Or you're on the ground, just outside in the backyard. And you're looking at the sun, you see that it has set. But in reality, if you stand on a hill, you might still see the sun. It might still be there, right? For this reason, we cannot be sure that Maghrib has kicked in, that Maghrib has actually started, until we look at what we call the eastern redness. So once the sun sets, you have eastern redness. When this redness fades away, when this redness is gone, you'll know it's time to pray Salat al-Maghrib. It's as simple as that. So you look at the sun, you make sure the sun has set, and then you look at the eastern redness. If the eastern redness is gone, it's time for Maghrib, and it's also time for iftar, to break your fast. Clear? Jayyid. Those are the 3 signs for salat. You realize that the signs are what? Very simple, very easy. Anyone can understand these signs. So, the second point is the signs that determine the start of prayer time and the start of fasting must be noticeable by all people who are mukallaf. Next, the sign for the start of Fajr, as we said, is a horizontal beam of light that appears on the horizon. The sign for the start of the Islamic noon is the appearance or the growth of a pole's shadow. And the sign for the start of Maghrib time is the disappearance of the eastern redness. Now, the sign for the beginning and end of a lunar month also must be clear, just like the signs for prayer are clear. And that is what? Sighting the crescent moon. Very simple. And we realize that the Arabs at their time, they used to use the crescent moon to determine their months. Now realize, if you compare between the solar months, for example, like January, February, March, April, so on and so forth. You compare between these months and the lunar months, like Rajab, Sha'ban, Shahr Ramadan, Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, you'll see that the average person can determine when the lunar month begins and when the lunar month ends, because the sign is very easy, very clear. But the average person who's not an astronomer is not able to determine the beginning of January or February and March, unless you have a calendar, of course. You're not able to determine that. Why? Because those months are in need of specific calculations. They're depending on the sun itself, and they're in need of calculations that only knowledgeable people, in better terms, astronomers, are able to do. Right? For that reason, you see that Islam did not attach the major obligations, such as fasting and such as Hajj, to the solar months. It attached the major obligations to the lunar months, because the sign for the lunar month is much easier. Now, sign is very clear and simple. It is to sight the crescent moon. Sighting the crescent moon isn't difficult if it has reached the point where it is called shahr. Shahr. Remember, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمْ الشَّهْرَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says on this account, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 189, they ask you concerning the new moon. Say, they are times appointed for the benefit of men and for the pilgrimage. Now realize, what happened here? First of all, Allah started with the word يَسْأَلُونَكَ. And يَسْأَلُونَكَ is فَعَلْ مُضَارَعَ, which means that the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, was asked several times by people at his time about the crescent moons. The people wanted to know, why does the moon go through several phases? At times it's a new moon, at times it's a crescent moon, at times it's a full moon. Why? What's the reason behind that? Now you have to realize that the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him and his family, is the wisest and most knowledgeable human on the face of the earth, from his time, or in better terms, from the time of Adam until the end of times. When he answers a question, he's going to answer the person based on his level of understanding. So imagine an Arab Bedouin, or someone who just got out of the era of Jahiliyyah, the era of ignorance. He's coming forth and asking Rasulullah, why does the moon go through certain phases? Today we've discovered why. We have discovered astronomical reasons We have our astronomical answers. However, at that time, the Prophet ﷺ, if he were to explain to them what happens with the moon, how it will go through certain phases based on its position and based on the position of the earth and the sun, so on and so forth, the people won't understand him. Most people, the questioner himself, might not understand the Prophet. The Prophet has said, as Imam Salih tells us, we prophets of God, we address people based on their level of understanding. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet, answer in the following way. Tell them that the moon goes through certain phases. Why? For two reasons. For two major benefits. When the Quran says two major benefits, it doesn't mean there aren't any other benefits. And I'm telling you this because this verse could be used against us. Could be used today by non-Muslims or an atheist, saying that the Quran is telling you, say there are times appointed for the benefit of man and for the pilgrimage. But we've discovered other reasons why the moon goes through phases. What do we answer? We say at that point, the Quran did not neglect the remainder of the reasons. It did not deny the other reasons. But it said these are two main reasons why the moon goes through these phases. The first reason is that mawaqit linnas. These are times appointed for the benefit of men. How do these times benefit men? How does the crescent moon and the phases of the moon benefit men? Because when the moon goes through phases, we're able to determine the beginning and the end of the month. Based on that, we're able to determine the months throughout the year. So we're able to divide our time into months, years, so on and so forth. That's number one. Number two, based on the phases of the moon, we'll know when a person is baligh, right? Because when he becomes baligh or she becomes baligh, then he'll have to apply the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's number two. Number three, when a lady, for example, is divorced, she has a waiting period. She can't get married in that waiting period called in Arabic, iddah. How does she determine iddah? Based on the phases of the moon, based on the lunar months. The Arabs at the time of Jahiliyyah, the fourth point, the Arabs at the time of Jahiliyyah, they used to, for example, set a certain date based on the phase of the moon. Number five, you might have a debt with someone. You'll tell them, for example, that you must pay your debt by the 15th of Sha'ban. How will you know when is the 15th of Sha'ban? Based on the moon. So again, the Quran says, قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. It is basically, there are times appointed for the benefit of man. And last but not least, for the pilgrimage, Hajj. The season of Hajj is determined based on moon sighting as well. Because when you determine when is the beginning of the Hijjah, the first, you'll be able to determine when is the 9th and the 10th. 9th is day Arafah. And Arafah is basically the most important deed to perform. In better terms, standing on the Jabal Arafat, standing on the mountain of Arafat, on the day of Arafah, is the most important deed in Hajj. The most important one. And so you need to determine when is the 9th. The 10th of Dhul Hijjah, on the other hand, is Eid al-Adha. And so that will also depend on moon sighting. Now, how clear will the crescent moon be once it is seen? We'll finish the slide inshallah and we'll take a break. How clear will it be? Usually when one person will be able to see it, a large group of people will also be able to see it. This is something very important to realize. Okay? Although people make mistakes sometimes, they might see something and they might think it is the crescent moon. But the Imams in their ahadith, they guarantee that if there's a large group of people that are trying to sight the moon and one person truly sees it, the rest must see it as well. Where do they say this? Look at the narration of Imam As-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. He's asked by Ibrahim, son of Uthman al-Khazzar. He's told, كم يجزي في رؤية الهلال? How many people are needed to have seen the moon in order to depend on their testimony? So, how many people do we need to go, for example, how many people do we need to go to Malden Park? And how many people need to testify that they've seen the moon? 50, 100, 1, how many? The Imam says, fasting the month of Ramadan is one of Allah's obligations. Thus, do not base your fast on assumption. This is the first thing that the Imam wants to teach us. That fasting the month of Ramadan is a big deal. It's really important. And so we can't rush into the fast. What happens usually is that people will object. They will say, why are you delaying your fast? Suppose, for example, we had a difference whether the month of Ramadan was Monday or Tuesday. By the way, this year it's going to be either Monday or Tuesday, inshallah. Next Monday or next Tuesday, we'll find out based on moon sighting. So some people will start on Tuesday, some people will start on Monday. Those who start on Tuesday will be attacked. Why are you starting on Tuesday? Why aren't you beginning your fast? As if we have to rush into the month of Ramadan. Give it its time. The Imam says it's a huge obligation, something very important. You can't just rush into it based on dhann, based on assumption. Well, I think the moon should be seen today. You can think as much as you want, but at the end of the day, thinking is not enough. We have to see it. So the Imam said, alayhi salam, thus do not base your fast on assumption. Then he said, if a group of people try to sight the moon, and only one of them claims to have seen it while the rest say they didn't see it, one cannot consider the moon to have been sighted. So you have a group, and one says, I saw it. The rest should be able to see it. The Imam is saying, if the rest can't see it, why can't they? Don't they have eyes as well? So what did he really see? That's the question. The Imam says, if one person sights the moon, 100 will sight it. So when one is able to see it, 100 should be able to see it. And if 100 people sight the moon, 1,000 will sight it. When 100 people can see it, then 1,000 will be able to see it. So again, this is why we tell the community to go and try to sight the moon. Try to see. Unfortunately, at Malden Park usually we have 5 or 6 people trying to sight the moon, which is good. But if we were bigger in number, it would be more beneficial. Especially when one claims to have seen it. At that moment, if we're 100, suppose, we're going to ask him, if you saw it and it's that clear, why didn't the 99 see it? Well, they have eyes like you do. Right? Yes, we're going to see, inshallah, as well. This is important to say. That if one person is certain he saw it, suppose Ahmad saw the moon and the rest of the 99 did not see it, but he's sure he saw it, he must fast the next day. The next day is the month of Ramadan for him because he's certain he saw it. But for us, we say no. We're not going to fast. Unless we fast the day of doubt, which will come inshallah. We'll see how we can fast that day. But we will not consider that the month of Ramadan has started. Any questions? Jayyid. Inshallah we'll continue after a 10-minute break. There are refreshments in the back room. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.